All right, gang. How are we doing so far? How was Lyft? Good. Good. Was it fun? Okay. Did everyone do their activities? Everyone did them? Did you do them, Cole?
Yeah.
You did? Yep. So what are our reflections? Because if we did them for 25 minutes, we definitely should have noticed some things we've never noticed before.
I thought we only had to do it for 5 minutes.
5 minutes each day. Yeah, so 25 minutes total.
I had a lot of past mind.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so if you notice that you're in a lot of past or future minds, eyes and ears when we're talking, 40 minutes of focus. Okay? Was it easier to stay present? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay? So just simply noticing when you're not in the present puts you more in where?
Double checking. We didn't have to do it over the weekend, right?
Nope. So 5 days you guys did, correct?
Yeah.
Everybody did 5 days?
Yep.
Okay. What are our biggest questions and reflections? This is time to discuss what we've learned so far.
I was really concerned with what was going on around the room.
Okay.
Trying to focus on what I was thinking about.
Okay, that's good. And so, boys, should we be focused on thinking?
No.
You're simply watching the breath. But is it okay to think? Mm-hmm. Totally. Is that what makes you better at focusing on the breath? Which brings you more back into what moment? Present. We got that, Coop? Mm-hmm. Are we all on the same page? Mm-hmm. What else? Who did the activity and was like, this could definitely be helpful? Raise your hand if that you think it's helpful. Okay, now raise your hand if you didn't think it was helpful. It's okay to say, okay, Luke, you didn't think it was helpful. That's totally okay. What parts did you not think was helpful? It was just hard to know what to do? Yeah. Okay, that's okay. So are you doing a lot when we do the focus meditation?
No.
Is that the point? Mm-hmm. Okay, so because when we're bored, what does our brain like to do?
Wander.
It loves to wander. So is that the perfect scenario to get good at coming back to the moment and stopping the wandering? Mm-hmm. So it's not necessarily the most fun thing in the world, but if you're curious about what's going on inside you, it can be super cool to kind of see what's going on. So Luke, what do you have after this? Basketball. After that, can you come find me? Yeah. Okay, I have a break and we can talk about it a little more. Sound good? But I want you guys to see the benefit. And if you don't see the benefit, just talk to me. Okay? And I'll do my best to explain what it's trying to do. But everyone else, did we kind of like how we had an actual meditation to do each day? Mm-hmm. Cool. Are we liking the first 2 days of class so far?
Yep.
Do we think there's things that you can take away from it?
Yeah.
That you think it's going to help you with?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Beautiful. Obviously, I'm not as fun as the weight trainers and the basketball trainers because you guys get to actually play a sport. But is this probably the most important thing you do in limitless performance? Yeah. Probably, because you're going to use a lot of these tools in your everyday life? Mm-hmm. Yes. So it's not just about the sport. Cool? Mm-hmm. Awesome. You guys ready to start? Yeah. All right, open up, write down the date, and we're going to write down this word. Oh, you can't even see it. Heart. Heart. Okay, here you go, buddy. All right, write down the date, June 24th, and then the word heart. Okay. So, you guys, what did we do on the first day? We learned about the what? What did we learn about? The mind and mindfulness, right? What's mindfulness, kids?
Oh, that was the one we wrote down.
Yep. Remember I told you better come back with the definition next class?
Yeah, I'm looking.
So what's mindfulness? Just think about it, boys. What are we doing?
On-purpose awareness of this moment.
Okay. So everyone say that back to me together. Ready? Go.
On-purpose awareness of this moment.
Okay. On-purpose awareness of this moment. So what are you doing essentially? You are? Yes, you're present. Are you watching? Right? You're watching what's going on in this moment. Okay, that's mindfulness. Are we all clear on that? If you aren't watching, are you blind?
Technically, yeah.
Yeah, if you can't see, you're blind. Okay? So that means you can't understand what's causing you problems and you can't understand what's going to help you. So do you see why mindfulness is so helpful when we talk about the mind? You do? Because you can actually see the movie, Luke, and then make good decisions because you actually see the movie. It's like talking about the movie that you have never seen before. That's what most people do. They don't see what's going on in their mind, so you can't understand it, you can't fix it, you can't work on it. Cool? We're getting closer and closer to understanding what mindfulness actually is? Okay. Second class was about what? Time. All right. What was that about? Putting our energy and minds into the moment, because where do we grow? Now. Beautiful. You guys got it. And the third one is going to be about the heart. Okay, and we'll define what that actually means, but for this speech, kids, just get rid of all definitions, okay? And then if you have questions about how I define it, okay, ask those questions. Because do a lot of people see that word and think of it a lot differently from person to person? Cool. So we'll define it together. Sound good? So, what's the problem? Do you guys have any idea where I'm going to go with the heart, Ollie? That's okay. So, there's something in our minds, kids, called the ego. Let's write it down. The ego. Okay? The problem, we misbelieve that focusing on ourselves is going to give us more of what we're looking for than if we focus on others. That's the problem. We misbelieve that. I'm here to tell you that you get more of what you want if you actually focus less on yourself. Isn't that kind of crazy? Yeah? How do you think this company, CTG, was able to grow so fast?
Because you guys work together?
Well, we were concerned for who?
Us.
You guys. You were always concerned. We were focused on quality for you, and that was it. Right? If we always have that intention, are we going to give you the best possible results or the best chances of good results? Yeah. Yes. Okay. The cause, we let the ego run our lives. We're constantly focused on us, what we think about things, what we judge about things. All right? And that's causing us the problem. All right? We're not getting as much of what we're looking for because of the ego. Does that make sense? The solution is we build on the heart, and we'll define what that is. Okay? First, let's go back to the ego. Okay? Have you guys heard of this word before? What's the ego?
It's like making you selfish. It's when you focus on yourself more than you do others.
Certainly, when we're focused on the ego, we are thinking of ourselves more. Okay? So the ego, kids, is a collection of the thoughts, experiences, knowledge, all the things that we built up in our life has created this image of ourselves. Okay? So I want you to write that down. The ego is how we see ourselves. The ego is how we see ourselves. And then after that, I want you to write as separate. How you see yourself as separate. And I want you to underline separate. We're going to get into why that word is going to be crucial for the speech. Okay, so what's the ego, kids? Beautiful. It's this image of you, and you see yourself as separate from everything else, as separate from other people. Are we cool with that? Do we get that definition? Yes? Okay. Now, what is this picture? It's a butterfly. Everyone write down a butterfly, or draw a quick picture of it. Okay? This is what we call the wings of mindfulness, kids. Okay? So, the first step to mindfulness that we talked about is you got to what?
See?
You got to watch. You got to see, right? To see, you have to what? Watch, okay? So one wing is watching, correct? Is that what we've been working on, kids? Okay. The second wing, write this down, is non-judgment. Non-judgment. If you don't use one of the wings with the butterfly, it can't what? It can't fly. This is what the speech is all going to be about today, kids. The word non-judgment. All right?
What does one say?
One says watch. Sorry, the pen wasn't working. Okay? So today we're going to learn about what non-judgment is and why it's so important, okay, for our mindfulness. Cool? But is it true mindfulness if you're judging?
No.
It's not. It's a key piece. It's a key component. We cool? What are the two wings to mindfulness? Watching and non-judgment. Beautiful. Okay. Now, let's talk about objective versus subjective. Have you kids heard of this word before? Do you want to give me a guess at what you think it is?
What the ideal, like what you're trying to get to, and what you gotta do to get to it.
Okay, that's another definition. We're going to talk about a different way of defining objective. Okay? So, what's perception, kids? Remember we learned about in class 1? What's perception? It's a way of
Like how you perceive it.
a way of seeing. Is that perception? Yeah, no, that's okay. Is perception a way of seeing? Yes. So if I watch a movie, right, and I'm watching with Coop. Coop loves the movie. I hate the movie. Is it the same movie? Do we have two different perceptions? Yes. Are we all cool with what perception is? What's perception, kids? The way we see something. Write that down. Perception is the way we see something. Now, up here, these are two different examples of two different ways of seeing, which means it's two different perceptions. Okay? Objective perception, kids, is when we don't have the ego in our perception. When there is not an ego in our perception. I draw that next to objective. Subjective is when we do have what? Ego. Okay? So, is this making sense, kids, so far? So, no ego, objective, yes ego, subjective. Okay? Now we're going to talk about how this looks in real life. So let's take basketball or sports. Okay? Let's say you airball a shot. You don't just airball a shot, you airball 3 shots. What are most of you going to be thinking in your head?
That they're not a good shooter.
Not a good shooter. What kind of statement is this, kids? What'd you say? You're judging what happened. Okay? So, this circle, kids, represents that experience. Okay? 3 air balls. This separate circle, okay, is our subjective or ego's take on what happened. You with me, Ollie? Okay? So, what was the example you used? I'm not a shooter. And that's a what statement? Judgmental. What's an example of an objective statement, or one without the ego of that situation? I airballed 3 times. Is that what happened? That's how you perceive it. You airballed 3 times. It's not good or bad. That is judgment. Does that make sense, kids? When we judge, you can draw this picture. It's what that word is in the ego. It creates what? Separation. Okay? When we judge, we create separation. Let's write that down. When we judge, we create separation. Why is this a problem? What do we think, kids? Which circle, so like right now, you can think of subjective perception or ego's perception. We'll use for you kids. Just think that looks like ego's perception because you have the way you're judging it on top of what happened, correct? What's an example of a mindful perception without the ego, or it's objective? How many circles? 1. Why is having 1 circle way more beneficial for you kids? Yes. Are you seeing it as it happened? You're seeing what happened, not what you think or what you want to happen. When we judge the situation, Coop, Does that prevent us from seeing it clearly? Yes. So when you watch a movie, do you go inside the movie and change everything about the movie, what you want to happen? What? No. You just watch it, the movie, and you let it be as it is. Correct? That's what non-judgment is. When you just watch it as it is. And you make different objective statements. So I airballed 3 times. Not I suck at shooting, right? I made 3 shots. Not I'm a really good shooter, right? Do we see the different ways of looking at it? Yes? When we're objective, or when we don't have an ego in our perception, kids, eyes and ears, okay? When we're objective and we don't have ego in our perception, why do you think that helps us?
Because then when we do bad, we don't feel so bad. And when we do
Are you concerned about the facts or what you want to happen?
facts,
The facts. If we're just looking at cause and consequence, meaning what the result was, is that going to help us grow faster? Yeah, because when do we get stuck? What trips up our growth? For sure. And also when we're in what? When we're doing what to the situation?
separating,
We're separating, we're judging, right? We get stuck in judgments. We define ourselves by judgments. When in reality, if we just looked at it as, when I do this, this happens. When I do this, this helps. When I do this, it doesn't help. Not, this is good, this is bad. Does that make sense? Yes?
so what you want us to do is you want us to like find what helps and what doesn't help instead of finding what's good and what's bad.
Correct. I want you to look at situations, ooh, when I do this, I get better at this. Okay, when I do this, it doesn't help. Right? Because then you're just looking as it is. You're not saying, Nolan, when I shoot 500 shots, it's good. It's when I shoot 500 shots, shooting improves. Do we see the difference in statements? Okay, and we're going to go deeper into why it's so important. Cool? But the biggest thing, do we want to judge kids?
No.
Why?
Because then that creates separation.
Beautiful. And what does separation create?
That separates like what happened and how you.
Is that what creates problems? So you can think of this separation, kids, as tension. Right? When we're tense or there's strain, are things easy? No. This gets me into a concept called effortless. Effortless. Okay? What's effortless?
It means it's easy. You don't
It's
put effort.
It's easy. Do you perform better when things are effortless? Oh, no? Who? I would say you do for sure, right? When we're in that flow state, you remember from class 2? Do we remember the flow state? What's going on in that state?
You're fully aware.
You're fully present, right? Are you thinking a lot of thoughts? No. Are things really easy in the flow state? It's effortless, okay? We just said there's not a lot of what there? There's not a lot of thinking, right? Thinking gets in the way of a lot of our problems. Where does thinking come from, kids? The ego. And what does the ego create? What are all our thoughts? Judgments. Right? If we're judging more, we're thinking more. If we're thinking more, is that causing us to get stuck? Is that preventing us from being here and working on what we need to work on? Does that make sense? So we have more thoughts because of judgments. Okay? So that separation creates the tension, the strain, all of our problems for us. So if we eliminate judgments or we start to try and practice more non-judgment, okay, are we going to perform better? A lot better. Is everyone with me so far?
Yeah.
Are we seeing how it could be beneficial, Nolan? Are there any major questions? Because this is complicated. And this is the first time I've tried to explain it to kids as young as you. So don't be afraid to tell me I'm confused. Because I'm doing my best here for first time talking about non-judgment. Cool? But it is a crucial piece of mindfulness, so I knew I had to figure out a way to teach you kids it. Okay? So, when we're in a pass-fail mindset, what type of perception are we in? We have separation, right? We're judging because what's in our perception? The ego. Okay? The ego separates, remember, that's beautiful. So when we look at something as a pass or fail, right, we're judging it. Okay? So if we're taking on mindful perception, kids, all right, is there failure? No. Failure is a judgment, right? Say you play your basketball game, Nolan, and you scored 10 points, but you wanted to score 20, right? The expectation of wanting to score 20 points is what created what? Which is causing the problem, right? You're not seeing it as, I scored 10 points. You're seeing it as, I didn't score as many points as I should have. I'm a failure. Do we see the difference there, kids? So expectation is also judgment. We're separating. That's the problem. This separation is the problem. Say, Nolan, you sit down and you did your activities. Do you have siblings? Okay. Nolan sat down to do his meditation activities that I assigned to him last week, Luke. Okay? Say his siblings were making a bunch of noise while he was trying to meditate. All right? Most of us in this situation would get what? Upset, annoyed. Okay? Why is that happening?
Because we had the expectation that we'd be silent.
Yes, that's perfect. Okay? The expectation, or you're judging the situation, right? They're not acting how I want them to act, right? They're not doing what I want them to do. Okay? So we're not seeing it as, Nolan, my siblings are making noise as I meditate. You're seeing it as, I can't meditate because my siblings won't shut up. They're annoying. Do we see the difference in those two perceptions? Yeah. So which one benefits us more?
Shutting the siblings up.
No, definitely not, Cole, right? Seeing it, the situation as it is, you're not putting a judgment on it. Are you going to be able to respond better if you're not judging the situation? Yes. Because what gets you stuck is the judgment. You can't get over that. The judgment's what creates you to be upset. Does that make sense, kids? Mm-hmm. So essentially, problems come from what? Judgment. Beautiful. Write that down. Problems come from judgment. You can find a new page, Cole.
Yeah, that's on my next week page.
That's okay. We'll get you a new one if you run out by the end of the summer.
Problems come from judgment?
Yes. Because is there a problem, Nolan, with your brothers if you see it as they're making noise?
Yeah. Well,
If you judge it, there's a problem. If you don't judge it, are you going to respond in the best way you can?
yeah.
Because if you're not judging, are you only focused on what you can control? Judging, write this down, gets us caught up in what we can't control. That's what judging does. And like we learned, we have a limited amount of energy, kids. So if we spend some energy somewhere, Coop, where are we spending less energy? Now. Beautiful, or on what you can control. Don't worry about spelling. What did I just say to write down, kids? What was the phrase?
Judging gets us caught in what we can't control.
Beautiful. It gets us caught in the uncontrollables. Are we all seeing how judgment can really hinder our growth? Because is it all about teaching kids to grow as fast as you can?
Yes.
That's what it is for me. I'm trying to teach you how to create a rocket of growth. Okay? Now, when I use the word ego, kids, I'm using it as a way of seeing the separate ego. Okay? When we have a separate ego, when we see ourselves as separate, okay, from other people, does that create a hierarchy, meaning you're above and below others? Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay? So the separate ego creates a hierarchy of how you view yourself and other people. So there's higher and lower. Are we all getting that? Yeah. Does that create us a lot of problems?
Yeah.
A lot, right? Because are you going to be as good of a person if you look at someone below you?
Probably not.
Probably not. What about if you see someone above you? Are you going to have as much confidence? No. Lack of confidence comes from the separate ego, right? You're putting people above you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when we're, yep.
What if you always have to look down on people?
That's what we don't want to do that at all. We don't want to look up to people, and we don't want to look down to people. We want to see them on the same what? Level.
What if they're shorter than you?
No, this is mental, not physical. Okay, you're good, buddy. Okay? So what type of ego do we want to take on? Am I saying get rid of it completely where you put others before you always? No, I'm saying you put yourself and other people on the same plane. They're all even. Good way of thinking of it. That's perfect. Does that make sense, kids?
Yeah.
So when I say the ego is the problem, am I telling you to get rid of it completely? No. I'm telling you to start identifying yourself more with others. Okay? What this means, kids, when you think of your basketball team, okay, Do you normally think of, I'm on this basketball team, these kids are part of my life, but they're not part of me? Normally, yes, right? So on a basketball court, how many players are there?
10. No, yeah, 10.
5 on your team, right? So you're 20% of the team, okay? If we see ourselves as separate, is there a lot more weight on us to perform? Mm-hmm. Yes. What if I distribute how I think of myself into other people and other people on my team? Is there less weight on me?
Yeah.
There's less weight on me, and am I actually going to be concerned about my teammate? Yeah, because you actually want them to get better, because you see them as part of you, on the same level, on the same playing field. Does that make sense, boys? Okay, so it's an interconnected way of looking at yourself. If I tell you to look at this table, do most people see this table as separate from everything that went into building the table?
Yeah.
Yes. Were there so many things that had to go into building this table? So many things. What about you, yourself? Are there so many things that went into building you?
Yeah.
So are you separate from all those things that happened to you that helped build you and that image of who you are? You are separate? I would say you're interconnected. Do you see the difference? Like Coop, your ancestors from 300 years ago, do you have any idea who they are? No, but do they affect you? They made you, right, into who you are. Isn't that kind of crazy? Myself, right, 20 years from now, say there's one line from this speech, okay, and you remembered that one line, and it changed the way you respond to all events. Am I a part of your interconnected ego? Yes, right? I'm not separate from you then. That's why is it a lot more fun to identify with the others around you than seeing yourself as separate? Yes, way more fun if you see it that way. And if you look deeply, it is that way. Okay? If we live on the surface, that's what is creating the separation, this misbelief that we're separate. Does that make sense? So do you see how it's beneficial to stop the separate ego?
Yeah.
Cool. We're using a ton of big words, kids. Lucy, are you on the same page? We good right now? Are we all kind of getting the gist of what we're trying to go for? Okay. Now, what are we at for time?
10:45.
It's 11:45. It means we have 15 minutes. Shoot. Okay. I'm going to go through this as quickly as I can. Results of the ego. There's going to be more what if we have more of a separate ego? Fear. Is fear a big part of our game? Huge part. Okay. What does fear come from? You kids are smart. Okay. The biggest thing I need you to understand about fear is it's a response. Write that down. Fear is a response. What does fear come from typically? Well, yeah. What's the thing I tell everyone to be more skeptical of? We should stop listening to what? Thoughts as much, right? Does fear most of the time come from thoughts? Yes. Fear is a response to some sort of thought about something. Okay, so does it mean it's the actual event? No, it's a thought response about it. Say there's a bear in the room. There's a bear in the room right now. We're going to get a shot of what?
A shot.
No, a fear. Like we're going to get a lot of fear that runs through our body. Is it good to have fear sometimes? Yeah, it helps us. It helps us move in certain situations. Okay? But even if the bear's right there, I'm having fear about what could happen. The thought about what could happen. Okay, so the fear is a response to thoughts. Are we getting the difference there? Does the same situation happen? Do we have that same fear response to parts of our life that aren't as serious as a bear being in this room and about to attack us? We do, but is it as important as a situation like that? So is it a right situation to probably have that same fear response? No. And as we've learned, what does thoughts come from? It goes the ego, right, which causes judgments, which causes thoughts. Isn't that kind of cool how we're learning where thoughts come from? And so if we stop the non-judgment, right, if we start learning how to practice that, okay, we're going to have less thoughts, we're going to have less ego, which means we'll have less fear, because fear is a response to those simulations in our head. Cool? Are we all on the same page, kids? We are? Yep.
So you don't want us to be afraid of what could happen, but like just be present in the moment.
I'm not telling you to not be afraid. Is it okay to be afraid?
Yeah.
I'm telling you to know what your fear is coming from. Understand the cause of the fear. Because if you truly understand the cause of the fear, are you likely going to be as scared? Probably not, because it's probably coming from a thought that's not that serious. But that only comes if you what?
Open your eyes.
Open your eyes and watch. See how it all comes back to mindfulness? You can't work on any of these things if we don't see it. Cool? Now, kids, I'm going to go through this quickly. Compassion, write that word down, compassion. Has anybody heard of this word before?
Yeah.
What is it?
The love to do something.
Okay, that's a good guess. That's the word passion. It's very close to empathy. Okay, so empathy is when I feel for another person, correct? I can feel myself in their shoes. I feel for them.
Understand the struggle of others and the desires.
So compassion is acting on empathy, right? It's actually doing something. You feel bad for another person, you want to go help them. You're actually doing it, okay? So write that down. You can write this definition, or you can write acting on empathy if you know what that means. Okay? Compassion is getting our focus to be less on what?
Ourselves.
Less on ourselves. So the more we think about ourselves, are we seeing ourselves as more separate? So the more we focus on us, the more separation we're creating. If we have more separation, does that mean there's more judgment? Is there more tension and strain? Is there less effortlessness? Is there going to be a lot more problems? Yes. So if I can give you activities to prime your brain to start focusing more on other people, does that distribute that separate ego a little bit more? Are we going to judge less then? Yes, that's what it's looking for. So we're still working on the non-judgment, but it's by focusing on other people. There are in later classes, if you're here throughout the summer, where we'll learn about actual non-judgment activities. It's just very hard to start there for a young mind and someone that just learned about mindfulness 3 weeks ago. Cool? So instead, I'm going to have you do a simple activity of focusing on others. We got that? Now, unchanging compassion. Very important word. Why do you think it needs to be unchanging compassion? What do we think I mean by that?
Because if it keeps changing, it's not consistent.
So by unchanging compassion, all right, an example of changing compassion is Nolan. It's really easy for you to want your mom to struggle less, right? Because you love your mom, right? What about someone you don't like, someone you're fighting with at school? Is it easy to want them to struggle less and to be happy? It's a lot harder, right? Unchanging compassion, because if it's harder, that means we're making what? Are we making judgments? Yeah, right? If it's changing compassion, you are judging the person and their worthiness of feeling less struggle. Does that make sense, kids? So we want it to be unchanging, because is that working on the non-judgment piece of looking at others? Yes, okay? Does everyone you see deserve just as much happiness as you do? For sure, right? And that's the biggest thing we need to learn. It's not about what other people do, okay? You have to know to see. Do any of you have an idea of what that means? You have to know to see. Let's say, Grayson, that someone is getting picked on at school, okay? Most of the time, we see that event as independent, meaning we label that kid as a bad kid, right? We see that event as independent from everything that led up to the event. Are there so many things that go into every single one of our choices on a daily basis? So many things, right? Your genes. What are your genes? Is that your DNA? Have you learned about that in science yet? Yeah. You have DNA inside you. So that predisposes you to do certain things, okay? So that's one thing that's interconnected in this independent event. Another thing could be your environment, how you're raised, who your friends are, okay? So many things go into every single choice someone makes. So you have to know to see means, can we take that event, pull it out, and judge someone for the singular event? No. Does that make sense, kids? If we have that understanding, is it easier to have compassion towards anyone? Yes. If we have compassion towards anyone, are we practicing non-judgment? Boom, mic drop. See how it all connects? Full circle? We all good?
Yeah.
Now we're going to learn our activity for the day. Okay? So, when we talk about unchanging compassion, there's positive, there's neutral, and there's negative. Who's an example of a positive person when we're trying to build compassion?
Your sibling.
This sibling, your mom, your dad. Is it really easy to want them to be happy? Super easy. That means it's a positive person, right? What's an example of a neutral person, you think?
A person that you're friends with but you don't really know a lot about.
So the front desk. You guys scanned that front desk, right? Did you really think about the kid we have at the front desk? About their thoughts, their feelings, that they live their own life? Did you give any thought to that? No, it's a neutral person. But are they just as important as you and deserving of happiness and less struggle? Totally, okay? So neutral people are somebody you don't give two thoughts to, but they still live their own movie just like you kids live your own movie. Do you get what I mean by living your own movie? Okay? So is it just as important to think of them? For sure. Negative people. What are negative people in unchanging compassion? Any guesses?
Someone who's mean at school.
Someone who's you have a tendency to dislike. Is it harder to want them to be happy?
Yes.
A lot harder. But is it just as important? Because if it's harder, that means you have a lot of judgment towards that person. We're trying to get rid of that judgment and seeing it as it is. Are we all on the same page? So what you're going to do for this activity, kids, everyone right now, and we're moving it up to 6 minutes. I know. It's tough. 1 more minute than 5 minutes. You don't think you can do 1 more minute than 5 minutes?
No.
What?
No, I'm just kidding.
So you did all 5 days 5 minutes.
I mean, I did 5 minutes, but
So you can't do 1 more minute than 5 minutes?
I mean,
That's just. That's.
I might fall asleep. I kind of get tired, but I might.
That's okay.
We can do it in the morning.
6 minutes. We're going to do 6 minutes. Is that okay?
Yeah, what are we?
I think you kids are old enough to do it. I'm going to teach you. I'm going to teach you. So everyone right now, write down a positive, neutral, and negative person out of the examples I just talked about. Positive, neutral, negative. An actual person in your life. You're writing them down right now. Does anybody not have one yet? You do or don't?
I do.
Pencils up in the air once you have it. Or you have it, Cole? There you go. Beautiful. Luke's almost there. Let me know when you got it, Luke. Do you have to tell anybody who your person is? No, you can keep it private. Okay, that's totally okay. Now, what we're going to be doing, just like in our one object focused meditation, we come back to the breath when we get lost, correct? Now we're making the person that you wrote down that object. So if you get lost, you're going to come back to this visualization of the person. When you're visualizing them, you're thinking about all the things, how you want them to stop struggling, how you want them to be more happy. You're acting on that compassion muscle inside you, that compassionate feeling, okay? So when I'm thinking about my mom, all I'm visualizing is I want her to struggle less. I want her to be more happy. I truly care about her, right? She's truly part of me. Does that make sense, kids? Normally you'd go 2 minutes positive, then you go to 2 minutes neutral, 2 minutes negative. So 6 minutes in total. Are we all seeing that? So when you do your meditations on a daily basis, you go from positive, negative to neutral. With your person, you're going to write a different person down each day. Okay, good. Yes, yep. Before you do it, so you know who you're going to think about. Does that make sense? We're going to do positive for today, so you can practice and ask questions. We don't have enough time to go through the whole stage. But does that make sense? We're doing 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes?
Do we have to just write down the people?
You're going to write down the people. That's all you got to do before you do it. Cool?
Is there anything after?
Well, after, if there's any crazy insight, write it down. Meaning there's a big realization you had that you haven't had before. Then you don't have to do anything. Cool? Mainly I'm concerned with you doing the actual activity, not what you write down. Otherwise, that's giving you kids too much. Cool? Should you feel good after this? you'll start to see you feel more fulfilled. You feel a lot better when we spread out that separate ego, when we stop seeing ourselves so far away from others. Cool? Any questions? Everyone in their positions. We're going for 1 minute with positive people. Okay, everybody got their person? On your marks. And are we moving when we do this? Feet on the floor, hands on your legs, 90-degree angle with your, stack of quarters. Beautiful. On your marks. Get set. Go. Time. How'd it go?
Good.
Does it make sense? Are there any major questions? How do we feel?
Good.
Does it feel good to actively try and practice compassion towards your positive person? Yes? Again, how does this tie in with everything I've talked about today?
Practicing compassion.
Practicing compassion, which helps us do what in mindfulness? Have less what?
Judgment.
Judgment, right?
Especially towards negative people and neutral people.
For sure, right? If we're identifying more with others, okay, we're thinking about others more, are we going to judge less? Is that a huge wing of mindfulness? Yes. So do we see how everything's connecting? Yes. Are there any major questions? So 6 minutes for 5 days this week. That's our agreement, correct? So are we going to bring it back? Awesome. All right, what do we think about today? It was good? Do we think what we learned can benefit us and translate to sports? Okay.
A little bit more confusing.
It is. It is okay. Kids, come back with questions and let me know if you have any major questions. It's okay.